Hi, Amal. We're live.
Hello, David. Thank you
Good
for having me.
good morning here from Montreal, Canada. I know it's not
I-
morning where you are.
yes, in the UK it's 3 o'clock, so it's afternoon.
Good afternoon to you then.
Thank
Welcome.
you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here today and for taking some time to talk to the Beyond the Thesis audience. Yeah, I'm really grateful that you could take the time to spend this almost an hour with me.
Great. I'm really delighted to be here. As I said, I kind of listened to your podcast. I'm definitely doing some catch up with it. And I found it really interesting, very informative, and I think it does kind of like widen the perspective when it comes to PhDs.
hmm Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the mission, and I hope we're going to be able to widen it a little bit more today with what you have to share with your experience. But we'll go there in a minute. Right now, so this is a live recording. We're now live on LinkedIn, live on YouTube, and even Facebook.
Okay.
What'll happen is in a minute, I will pause a little bit. I will share your bio and
Thank you.
then we'll start the interview from there. But for anyone who's watching, if you are watching and you can tell us, just send us a message saying the sound is fine, the image is fine. That always helps. But also, we're going to be talking about the title I chose for the conversation is has to do with student-led employability, which is a term that is on your profile, Amal, on LinkedIn, and that piqued my curiosity. But based on your experience and your mission that you've given yourself these last few years, it's going to be on how to flourish as a young researcher during the PhD. So I'm really, really eager to have this conversation with you.
Great. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Okay, so we everything is going fine, so we'll start.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome to this new episode of Beyond the Thesis with Papa PhD. Today, I have the great pleasure of having with me Dr. Amal Abuzeinab. Amal has is in the institute. No, sorry. Amal is the institute head of research students at the Institute of Architecture at the De Montfort University in the UK. She's currently supervising 3 PhD students, has supervised 4 PhDs to completion, and examined 4 PhD students. She served as the co faculty head of research students for the Faculty of Arts, Design, and Humanities between 2017 and 2020. And now she's the head of research students. Actually, Amal, first, welcome on Beyond the Thesis for Papa PhD. I'm super happy to have you here.
Thank you, David.
And second, my curiosity. So, what is this position? What does this role entail? Head of research students at such an institute, at such an institution.
Okay, great. So with the Institute Head of Research Students is almost an academic leadership position that looking after the PhDs. So the 4 areas, or let's say 3 areas that I look after the PhD students on is the PGR supervision and development, and also looking at the kind of like the guiding regulations and are they following, let's say, the guidelines and doing kind of doing the PhD in a good in a good way, following
Hmm.
the guidelines. And also it's about kind of really communicating with those PGRs and some kind of like a strategic thinking around what kind of type of communities that we would like to foster and develop during those years of the PhD, because it's a
Hmm.
long term thing. So that's kind of like broadly the, let's say, the main duties of the institute head of research student. So you can say
Hmm.
it's a leadership, but at the same time looking at the PhD students while they are with us at the institute. So once they have, let's say, became PGR with the institute, then we will be looking at ways of developing them, how it's kind of how they are working, And there is some kind of like definitely now elements of well-being as well, almost looking at those one, and
Mhm.
being able to post and signpost to relevant other services within the university as well.
Mhm. For the sake of the listeners, and also for my sake, what does PGR stand for
Okay,
exactly?
yeah, great. It's postgraduate researchers, which
Postgraduate
is, yeah,
researchers.
some people they
Marvelous.
call them PhD students, and I think the term we use within our university is PGRs.
I think it's a great term, and I've there's been episodes and conversations where I've gotten into the opinion, or I've gotten this idea and adopted it, of going away a little bit from saying PhD student and saying graduate researcher. I think it's
I
a,
think so because it's a very unique position in a sense, and sometimes the student it might not convey what they do in a sense,
exactly,
and the main thing behind a postgraduate researcher or the PhD training is really to being an independent researcher. And usually you try to think about that from the start. Yes, when they start, they are not independent researcher yet,
of
but
course.
that's the aim. That's what we are trying to achieve within, let's say, if it's a full time 4 years, or if it's a part time 6 to 8 years. And I think yes, moving away from the student, it
Hmm.
might be really helpful in terms of looking at that broader development, and also looking at the kind of the PhD journey as a self discovery,
Yes.
as I think it just is a huge thing. So we might just move away from the idea of a PhD student to
Hmm.
the PGR and someone on training, or maybe an intern that they are doing
Hmm.
this training to become an independent researcher.
Yeah, and I believe it can have positive impacts on how the graduate researchers see themselves in society, in the potential job market, and also on how people they interact with see them. It's a very different saying I'm a
Absolutely.
student or saying I'm a researcher.
Yes,
You're seen with different eyes.
absolutely. I think so. I agree. Totally agree with that.
Now, I find it really interesting that this position exists where you are, and I don't know if it's something that's very common in the UK in universities and in graduate programs. But talking with you before the interview, what really struck me was this mission and this deep desire that I felt on your side to help. And we mentioned this, we talked before the interview, to help graduate researchers flourish during their PhD. And even and I mentioned this at the beginning of the interview, even on your LinkedIn page, you talk about caring for their employability, or at least helping them work on that side of things. And this is something that is often lacking in programs, which is getting graduate researchers to think early of what comes after. Anyway, uh, and that's why I'm super happy that you're here, because I'm really curious on hearing what the model is, what types of approaches you use to support and accompany uh, PGRs, and but maybe I'll let you choose a starting point in this graduate studies journey with you in your department,
Okay.
and we can go from there.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah. So I think I always have a really deep interest with kind of like in the PhD journey and everything. I think because again I reflect back on my own journey, and for me, because I always looked at it as kind of like that wider development, and the opportunities were really great at the time when I did my PhD.
Hmm.
And from that time it's always, yeah, it's kind of like really within me that okay, we need to think, yes, you get your PhD, that's fine. And but then there are kind of, because again with the long term in the PhD, we have really enough time to try things out. We have time to almost experience different things, and then we can decide if what do we want to do after that. So having, and again when I look back into my own PhD, I did have some kind of vision around where I want to be. It wasn't planned, it wasn't something very clear, But then my approach at that time, looking back, it was really trying so many different things while I was at the university. So there were lots of opportunities around the kind of, I took some kind of like teaching assistant, some researching assistant roles. I took a role as almost like it's called CIB student chapter, which is kind of like a student chapter that based on looking at built environment in general.
Okay.
So I was the president for this student chapter for 2 years. And what I did during that time with other PGR, fellow PGRs, we did some kind of like social events, but also we did some training events as well, where we almost invited each other. If someone have got an interesting method that we didn't know about, they will come and give us a session around their method. Sometimes it might be around where I did my PhD, we had almost like different path for a PhD. So we have the one full time. This is where I was a full time, and we have another one which is called professional PhD. So those
Okay.
are professionals who are really busy, and they usually just, I think they have kind of like dedicated days for training. And sometimes we being asked as full-time PGRs to come and give some kind of presentation or training around the thing that we do, because the idea is we have got more time compared to the professionals. And I remember also I said yes to those ones. So I literally, I did say yes to so many different things. And those has really helped me to understand where I want to be and what are the things that I would like to do after the PhD. So it's kind of, and I think what I've been trying to almost replicate and say, okay, just use the years of the PhD. Some PGRs are very clear about what they want to do. And
Mhm.
sometimes it might be even part of their development. So maybe they are academic in their countries, and this is part of their development. So they come, they do their PhD, and then they go back again to their positions. But we do have, I think, a quite number of PhDs who really still doesn't know what they want to do after the
Mm.
PhD. And I think that's kind of like, this is where was my starting point is, okay, let's use the years of the PhD, try different things,
Mhm.
do many things, and understand the different option that is available to you, and
Mhm.
also to use the university services as well. So for example, in the UK, this is kind of like fairly standard that you will always have a career service within a university.
Of
And
course.
I always just encourage from day one, even if you don't know anything, just go and talk to them, have one-to-one meeting, show them your CV, show them what you are doing and what are the things that you are planning to do. And they will help you because they are dedicated for this one. They
Mhm.
are very trained. They know the expectation, and they understand the, let's say, the job market, if we use that term. So for me, they are a great
Yeah.
asset, and it's almost like they are accessible, and you can go to them multiple times, and you
Mhm.
can have
Mhm.
one-to-one. They do workshops. So for me, that was kind of like the starting point. Let's just see what is available. Try to use the resources you have, get the access that you have. You have got access to your supervision team. Ask them if you need something or if you need a specific skill that you would like to develop. They would be keen to do that with you.
Mhm. Mhm.
If there is something, it's kind of like in a broader university, reach out. Most of the time, you can get those experiences while you are doing there. So that was the starting point.
Mhm.
And then I think this year I started to kind of just be more clearer about how I'm doing this, almost like reflecting back onto
Mhm.
my own practice, as I think as all academic do. They always reflect back on what they are doing, and they try to see if there is any maybe models or theories or something that maybe we can use or adapt. And I knew about this flourishing model, which comes from the positive psychology. So
Mhm.
it's Perma for short. And so P stand for positive emotion, E for engagement, R for relationship, M for mattering, and A for achievements.
Mhm.
And I started to almost like use this as a way to engage with both in my role as a PhD supervisor, but also as institute head of research student. And I started to kind of say, okay, maybe I was using some elements of this one, but maybe I can just now be clear about it. Okay, those are
Mhm.
the elements I'm using, and we can use it as a reflective way of looking at, okay, maybe I need to do something in that relationship. when, and I can give you a concrete example. When I started my position as Institute Head of Research Student, that was back in October 2022. And I had almost just like really informal chats with the PGR in our institute, just try to understand what is going on, what are the things that they are doing. It really try to understand the context and what they are doing. And one of the things that came out from those informal conversations, it was almost okay, we don't come together as an institute or as a community. um, there is no, maybe there was something before the pandemic, but then when the pandemic came, maybe it stopped. So that was kind of the first thing. Okay, so they are looking for that relationship,
Yeah.
to be kind of like really meaningful. And then we started almost like brought it again, those monthly seminars where they can almost come and talk about their research. And we call it work in progress so that everyone is relaxed. Is not, no one is coming here to judge you. We know this is a work in progress.
Of
So
course.
that was kind of, yeah, some of the example that just really using one dimension and try to do something with it.
Mm, mm. That's really interesting. One thing that you said that a little, a few minutes ago, that's really, I think, really, really important to me is that question of just knowing the resources that are out there and using them. Because
Absolutely.
yeah, and this, I imagine, um and I know this. I traveled from Europe here to Canada, and you're not in your country, you're not in your university. I was, I was affiliated to university in Portugal. It's not a given that you, even in the first year, and even up to this, during your PhD, that you will know all the resources that are out there, that are available to
Yes.
you as a PGR, like you say, as a graduate student, as a graduate researcher. And I agree with you that it's a key and easy way to make things
Yes.
go much smoother, just knowing everything that you are entitled to in terms of services. So I just wanted to say that I agree with you, and I think it's a great point to make that one of the first things you do. Is like, okay, you're here, you might be even here from abroad, but even if you're from here, let's first make sure that you know all the points of contact, all the resources, medical, I don't know, mental health, etc., etc.,
Absolutely.
etc. I think it's a great point, and I'm super happy that you mentioned it, because it may feel a little bit, I don't know, you know uh, administrative, or kind of a detail, but it's not a detail, it's key.
Is a key, is definitely a key. And I think usually when I have the PGR, the one that I supervise, usually I always say to them, the first year is really about grounding yourself, finding your feet, finding yourself as a researcher, looking at, yes, you will definitely have to find kind of like your theoretical framework or your conceptual framework at that stage.
Of course.
You have to do this, but also it's really about, yes, grounding yourself, finding your feet, trying to understand the system that you are within. And we know that with the PGR, or I think generally speaking, there is lots of kind of like complexity. For example, they have a management system to manage their monthly meeting and their
Hmm.
paperwork and everything. So really knowing that management system, it takes time. So you
Of
need to
course.
kind of allow those times, and knowing even which email to email, because again, in the UK, that's kind of like a common thing that usually you have either, they call it like a, I think, graduate school or a doctoral college. In our university, Moffat
Hmm.
University is a doctoral college. So the doctoral college will almost do the admission, will do all this admin work, and also the monitoring,
Hmm.
the this, even this system, the management system, and everything. So knowing which email to email, I think that's again that's an important thing. If you have got something with your, let's say, access to the management system, if you cannot log into your like monthly report, or you cannot access something, which email you email? Do you email your supervisors? You don't need to. You have got those doctoral college who will look after the all this kind of like the admin support and the
Hmm.
management of the PhD in a way. So I think, yeah, knowing those, it takes time. It definitely takes time. Yeah. So
It
need
does.
to build
And
that within the first year. Yeah.
yeah, and the gains that you have from it, or the loss of opportunity if you don't know them, can be great. um,
Yeah, yeah,
because that first year is a year, like you said, of adaptation, of grounding yourself. And if you miss your step, and something happens and something is going wrong, and you don't have those contacts, and you don't have those channels of communications open, it might impact the second year, third year, of course.
absolutely. Yes, yeah.
Now I am really, really curious about the perma system, and you mentioned something that I try to bring up whenever it's possible. This The importance of relationships, the importance of community. And it's interesting that, and of course it was impacted by COVID, by the
Mm.
pandemic.
Yeah.
But I'm also I find it interesting, and actually telling that it's one of the first things you mentioned, this question of fostering relationships. Why are they important? Why is it something to maybe actually to concentrate yourself on early on, this building of relationships?
Because the PhD is really really tough, and
Hmm.
you have times where you kind of like really you don't know what to do. You are, and I think that's part of the PhD itself because it's very uncertain. You
Hmm.
start something, you don't know what the answer would be, you don't know how you will end up, and even when you develop in the PhD, every stage have got really complex issues and so on and so forth. So for me, that relationship is really about the support system. You need that support system during good time and difficult time, but yeah, in a difficult time we definitely need our support system. And when I say support system, I like to kind of like have it in a very wide or broad sense. So not just your family and friends, but also the university system itself, because there are systems there for support. We do have like system just looking after kind of like mental health, for example. There are other systems looking at if someone have got maybe they kind of like they having caring responsibilities, or they have got something affecting their studies. There are kind of support system in place, but also your peers. I think they are really important support system, and I always say your peers, not just your peers for the PhD, but beyond the PhD, you rely on your peers as well. At the moment, when I look at the current collaborators I have, those are
Hmm.
the one that I did my PhD with. So it's so
Yeah.
even after those so many years now, I'm still in touch with them. We do some collaboration here and there. We have those relationships. And because again with the PhD, because it's long, the time is long, as let's say as if we take the model of a full time, usually it's almost like 4 years.
Hmm.
You have enough time to build those meaningful relationship with people around you,
It's
and
true.
even with the supervisors as well. So they become, I always look at the supervisory relationship is something, it's kind of like a mentoring and a sponsoring sometimes, and even coaching, because again you rely on them, and you um, not rely in a sense that completely rely, but you tap into their wisdom, into their experiences, and if there is something that you are unclear about, even if it's not very much PhD related, you would still tap into those relationships because of the time that you spend together
Of course.
looking at very specific thing and looking at it from so many different dimension and perspective. So for me, relationships in a PhD is a key, is definitely
Hmm.
a key. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. Now, the second letter that really got me curious, and that I'd like to hear what you had to say about it, is M, mattering. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that one got me a little bit. Yeah, I really wonder what does it mean in your experience and in what you do
Okay.
daily.
Yeah, great. So with mattering, again, when I look at it, when I reflected back with the PhD, I always say PhD is a self-select. No one should push you to do a PhD.
Hmm.
It's always self-select. You have to have that kind of, it's very self-driven. You have to be almost, this is what I want to do. And that's
Hmm.
why the mattering is really important in that sense. So you are doing something that matters to you. And that's why is almost sometimes PhDs, the PGR will say, oh, I cannot switch off. And that's normal. Yes, because you do something that matters to you. You spend a lot of time, and you spend a lot of time trying to think about what you are doing. There is a lot of thinking, there is a lot of deep work. So it does matter uh, to the PGRs. And I think that's what I'm trying with is almost like as a again as a supervisor and as someone who supports. I always think, yes, it does matter to them, and I need to show them it matters to me too. And
Hmm.
this is, could be by almost, yeah, being responsive when there is need to be responsive to what they need to do, and also remind them. I think at some points the PGR will almost like get that lost thing where do I am I doing a PhD? If this will be a PhD, and then reminding them from the start how this kind of like matters to them and what does it mean to them. Again, I think that it does come natural in the PhD process.
Hmm. Yeah, it does, and yeah, and because of the nature of the exercise
Absolutely.
of
Yes.
answering this question no one has answered before,
Yes.
and it has to belong to you in a certain way, of course, with the support of your
Absolutely.
supervisor. No, it does make sense. Now, I think, you know, in some domains, let's say, theoretical mathematics, something like that. Sometimes it might be more difficult to find a direct link of what you do to in terms of mattering to a direct and tangible effect on the community around you. But I do think that, especially going into a PhD, it's important that you reflect. If you know someone listening is considering going into a PhD,
Mm.
make sure that the subject that you choose matters to you for some reason, because you'll be married to this project for three
Yes.
four years. So if that passion, or if that deep interest, that deep curiosity isn't there, it might be challenging in the middle. But I'm not saying that
Absolutely.
it's possible to, perfect project every time. But if it's part of the reflection, I think it's going to be it's going to be a win-win for you, and for the
Yeah.
lab where you are, etc. It's very interesting. You were going to say something?
Yeah, I think I just want to add to the mattering dimension, because again, when we say it's a self-select, because it again it brings that idea of, yes, it matters to them because they have self-selected to do this study. They
Hmm.
have self-selected to, they want to become an independent researcher, because I think that the ultimate thing with a PhD, by the end of it, you are contributing to knowledge and you are an independent researcher, and you kind of like show that there is evidence that you can, then after this you can go and carry on any independent research without supervision. So that
Hmm.
they kind of, even although we have different disciplines and subjects and everything, but this is kind of like the ultimate or the essence of conducting a PhD. And also when it comes to that mattering, when the people in the PhD journey, the idea again, after they finish the PhD, they become the expert in something very specific, very small. And again, it does matter when you think about that. Okay, I'm training myself, or I'm within this experience to gain that very specific. It might be technical skills, or it might be something else, but there is like a very specific thing that they will kind of come up with or come
Hmm.
out having it as almost. And it might even, I think in some disciplines, people after the PhD still is almost like it take them 10 years. They're still developing what they have done,
Yeah.
or they kind of like they evolve the research. So it does stays with you a lot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, for sure, for sure.
Yes.
And that's why it's important. And now, for you, what would be the next? We talked about the R, relationships mattering. What would be, maybe thinking of the people who come to you, graduate researchers who come to you? What's their key pain? What in the other letters? So we have Perma, right? In the other
Yes.
three letters, what's their main pain point usually? What is the domain that you think that they need to work on, especially, and to start working on as early as possible, when they engage in their project?
Yes, I think for me, what comes a lot is that engagement. Because when we look at the engagement from a perma perspective, it means that you can stay with something even if it's difficult and hard.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I think that that's for me the key thing with the PhD. So you almost have to develop your own ways of, it's a difficult thing. And I think again, I always acknowledge that a PhD is a difficult thing to do. And if we start with that acknowledgement, if we say it's a difficult thing, it's fine if you are feeling lots of doubts and you thinking I'm not good enough for this, or that's absolutely fine and that's normal and part of the process. What they need to do is almost, okay, how you develop the skills and the abilities to almost, yes, it's hard, I'm not making a progress here, it doesn't seem I'm achieving anything, but we
Hmm.
have to continue.
Yeah.
And for me, just really it is really different from one person to another.
Of
some
course.
some pgr might have like a really high level self of awareness, so they know, okay, when things get hard and difficult, and maybe I need to switch off, or maybe I need to take time off, or maybe, so some they have got really high level of self awareness,
Yes.
and others they might not have still that high level of self-awareness. And usually most of the time I always start say to think about your self-awareness, what you are doing for that domain. Maybe you can look, I always encourage to look at some of those kind of like evidence-based, psychology-based tests and things like that, which are really useful in a way that it shows you, or it give you better understanding of yourself. So it's almost, you kind of like try to research yourself. So you're not just researching
Mhm.
the topic, but you're researching yourself, how you work, where do you work best, what are the timing, and even the schedule of the work. Do you work better if it's Monday to Friday? Is it better for you? So I think again, knowing that, how to almost overcome those difficult times, and even knowing that every stage of a PhD will always have those difficult challenges. I can give again examples which I think it does come a lot within the domain or within the work that we do at the moment, which is more to do with architecture and built environment. And most of the PGR we have, they use a lot of social sciences research
Mhm.
methods. So they need access to people, they need to be able to kind of, yeah, build those. And there is always difficulties in
Mhm.
those,
Of course.
let's say in those time. So the idea again, do you have a plan B? Do you have a plan C? Do you have, because again things will go wrong, it not everything will go in a straight line, so you
Mhm.
have maybe to come back and reflect, and even thinking about your methods as well. Do you need to change something? Do you need to adapt something? And we had during the COVID, we have a lot of adaptation, because again of the social science nature of it, and that people need to go in a specific places and they need to interact with people and they need to do that. In COVID they couldn't do that, so they were like a lot of adaptation around, okay, can you do this online? Is it possible? Do you have
Mhm.
access to those people online? And again, it wasn't, no one was expecting that, but then it happened, and then we just have to deal with it. And I
Mhm.
think, yeah, having that, let's say, doing those muscles of being able to say, yeah, this is might go wrong, but then I can do this. I might need to collect data this way, but I might have to change it. And
Mhm.
also
Mhm.
having that flexibility when it comes to, it's almost like through the PhD, sometimes you come and have a meeting with your supervisors, and then they might almost like start to see things differently than you have seen them. So again, engaging with that process itself, maybe you convince them with something, or maybe you change direction a little bit, or you pivot, and that's all part of the learning, and very natural
Mhm.
process. With a good PhD, I don't think you will have a good PhD just like without any problems.
No, I think it's
And
part of
that
the
it is part of the
it's part of
process.
the process.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
I find it interesting, and I find it interesting that it all falls under the term engagement. But I kind of understand it, and it feels to me that, and you kind of talked about two types of graduate researchers, but thinking of the type who might, who might have come into the PhD maybe a little bit less self motivated, like you said. They did well at the masters, and then they were kind of invited to move into the PhD, and they're maybe not ready to go into the job market, and they went it in a more passive way, let's say. uh, what are, and I imagine you may have some of the PGRs that fall into that it's a spectrum, let's say, but that fall more on that side. What are things, exercises, or habits that you try to get them to adopt to be engaged in a way that's going to be conducive to a better PhD experience? Is this a question you could
Okay.
answer?
Yeah, I think I have kind of like broad ideas around this. Maybe I didn't think about it in more details, but definitely one of the things that within, let's say, within those doctoral colleges are there for a reason. So they
Hmm.
do a lot of training. It's
Okay.
almost training around almost how to manage your PhD, what to expect in a PhD, and because there is almost like a the first year there is something like a probation review, which is almost like just to check if this a PhD or
Hmm.
not.
Hmm.
And there is annual reviews and all those. So it's almost like that training part. This is usually where I try to push towards. And I think it's really for everyone.
Hmm.
They have to start with kind of like those training, what is available to them. Usually we have both almost like mandatory and also mandatory and voluntary ones. But I always say to them, just do all of them
Hmm.
because you try to find your
I
feet.
love it.
Yeah, do them because you try to find your feet, you try to understand where you stand. And also for me now, I was reading something around what they call it active rest, where you kind of really engage in something but is not related to what you are doing immediately. And I do sometimes see those trainings, either even the one that might not be related to your PhD. I see them as a way of an active rest because you can go
Hmm.
there. Yes, you are not, maybe you will not benefit from that directly, but it will give you that space to think and maybe to make links around the thing that you were thinking about or maybe you were reading. So it's definitely, I see like huge benefits around those training courses. And even now there is like more option. There is even you can get some online training as well. And I think one of the greatest thing now I push towards is the podcasts, because it's
Hmm.
literally you can learn while you are doing other things. So I
That's true.
definitely recommend podcasts as well, because during my time when I was doing a PhD, we didn't have any podcasts that I'm talking here about. So my PhD was around between 2011 and 2015. Definitely at that time we didn't have podcasts, but I remember what we had. I remember it was a book from the library, and it's about almost like how to conduct a PhD, something like
Hmm.
that,
Hmm.
which was again was really useful during my time. So I always say again, one of the things I try to encourage, not just almost like try to see how to conduct a PhD, find something around that, find others who have done it and learn from them. And as I said, podcasts are now very handy and more accessible compared to someone, if you don't like to go to your library and get a book, you can
That's
listen
true.
to podcasts. Yeah.
Well, I hope all your students listen to Beyond the Thesis.
I hope so. I definitely recommended it because I remember at some point I put some recommendation for some of the podcasts. I did kind of like sourced and asked others, and I came across, yeah, a few, and then I did recommend it for them.
But
Mhm.
it's true. There is, in your day to day as a graduate researcher, I remember I started listening to podcasts, and they weren't about graduate school. They were science related, and those have existed for a longer time. Now there's a lot of good podcasts out there about graduate school, etc. But there was a part of my work which was being in the microscope room counting cells, and so it was kind of a brainless activity that needed to be done
Mm.
manually, and that's when I was listening to podcasts.
Okay.
If I had
Yeah,
had graduate podcasts, I would have listened to them for sure, but
definitely. Yeah,
hey, now I'm doing
definitely.
one. So. I think I really like this idea of active rest. I think it's very smart, and it's very actionable. It can motivate you to, because one of the things that people, and tell me if you agree, PGRs often live or experience if they want to take a break is guilt of, or maybe because other colleagues are not taking breaks, or maybe
Yes.
because just because they feel like, oh, if my supervisor will be disappointed if now I'm doing something slightly different. But here, one thing that I would love to pick up on is that term that you said, finding their feet. And okay, you have 3 years, 3 4 years to do this project, but if you don't have your feet, there's no point in running from day one. So do what Amal just said. If you are offered any type of courses, trainings, etc., take them all, because one thing is certain: once you have your degree, you won't have access to any of those
That's the
resources.
thing. Yes. Yeah,
It's
absolutely spot on. Yeah.
and and uh, and it's not lost time, it's invested time. You're investing in
Absolutely.
yourself as a person, and also as a future researcher, or as a burgeoning researcher, or as a
Yes.
flourishing
Yes,
researcher.
as a flourishing one. Yeah,
I love it.
definitely. Oh, great. Yeah, definitely. Yes, I absolutely. I remember one of the things. Can't remember this when happened, but I remember I was invited back into my own university for a talk about the PhD journey, and I remember I said, it's almost like towards the end of the talk, I said, okay, being a PhD student is really a privilege, and you have to take advantage of that, because when you just say to people, I'm doing a PhD or I'm a PhD student, so there is kind of like that type of support and help that you will have access to, that you wouldn't get if you are not in that position or in
Exactly.
that place. And I see it now. I definitely, when I look in a UK context, because yeah, this is where I'm based and the experience is there. There is kind of like really a lot of things that coming out now around, again, around what people to do with their PhDs. There is a lot of kind of like blogs. There is additional support that is available, and even like a central kind of support in a way. There is ideas around internships, for example, so
Hmm.
that the PhDs or the PGR can expand and can try different things.
That's great.
And so there is a lot of, yeah, there is a lot of support at the moment when it comes to this idea of once you finish your, because not everyone, when they will finish their PhD, they might, not everyone will be an academic. I don't think so.
No.
And yeah, and then just, yeah, broaden that and making sure, okay, what are the options, and looking at, I always try to look at it as, okay, what are the skills and the strength beyond the PhD? Can you take them on? Can you use them in a different way? And that become almost like the assets or the thing that you focus on. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. No, I find it's really important, and it's really it makes me really happy to hear that from where you are, you can see that things are happening, and that these types of resources, these types of approaches are growing in number because they're necessary. And
Yes.
I don't know in your specific domain, but the latest studies I've looked at point to 15 to 20% of people that come out with a PhD being able to then go towards a tenure track career, and that leaves 80
That's
to
huge.
85% out of that.
Yes.
Of course, there's academic positions that are not tenure, etc., etc.,
Yeah.
but still, I think that this is one of the key, if you want, anyway, in my opinion and in my view of things, if we want the PhD institution to keep on going, and people to keep on wanting to do this difficult thing, resources like the ones you mentioned, that are more, that have a wider scope, that allow people to consider careers in the public domain, careers
Yes.
in public service, or in the private, even still while they're in academia, it's going to be positive for everyone. And I think even eventually for academia, because having
Yes.
connections with these domains is going to be important in the
It
future
is
anyways.
important, absolutely. And I think now there is, again, there is a lot of, yeah, a lot of kind of like encouragement and push around that collaboration between, let's say, if we just use two terms, academia versus industry, which is
Yeah.
is not great, but for clarity. But then yes, yeah, practice and academia and how you engage those two domains. And because I think now we are in a time where we really are facing a lot of kind of like pressing issues and pressing problems and global issues. And it's been, academia like traditionally is the way of, yes, we further knowledge and we are very kind of like long-term thinkers and all those kind of stuff. But now there is more demand around, okay, can we use the knowledge and the skills and research to be able to solve some of those problems, some of
Exactly.
those complex issues. And I think, yes, we are in the time where we need to widen that perspective. And I came across um, recently, or I knew about it, but I think I found this article which is talking about the portfolio career.
Okay.
And the idea behind it is, again, rather than looking at job titles, you almost like you think about, okay, maybe I need to expand here. Maybe I can do like a secondment here to be able to show my leadership skills. And you approach your career in yeah, you have got this portfolio of different skills and maybe different experiences. And then you might then write something around it, or what is the thread there. And so I
Hmm.
think that for me, it could be one of the ways that we could focus on and just talk about, yeah, let's talk about portfolio careers now. And
Yeah.
let's see how this can be done. And even within the institutions, can that be almost built? Can we have like a mini secondment or maybe a mini fellowship or something like that so people can still build the skills or try things out? Because I think you never know something until you try it out and you do the
Exactly.
day-to-day task. Then you
That's
can
true.
decide, oh, this is for me. No, this is not for me. But
Hmm.
we need places where they allow us to try things, and I think we don't have them yet.
Yeah, no, I think it will come, and I think, like you said, there's conversations happening. There's even institutional conversations happening, and I believe conversations like ours today are are more and more present in different platforms, be it podcasts or other. And I think, if the universities are open to modernize a little bit,
Yeah.
and to explore a little bit, also come out of the normal routine, then I think it'll give better outcomes for everyone. And because one of the things that I've seen, and we are reaching the end of our interview, but one of the things that I've seen and that I feel is sad is people who, 10, 15 years after their PhD, keep kind of a grief for some feeling of failure of not staying in academia, for example, or um, to have negative feelings associated to this experience of the PhD. And I wish for a time where that doesn't happen, or that becomes very rare. And um, and and I think this type of resource, this type of initiative, is great. And having a department in the university that actually is caring for the life,
Mm,
academic and outside academia, of
yeah.
PGRs is a great thing to see.
I think so. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think the future looks fine. I think it's almost like, yes, we're going in the direction in a way. I think we're going into the right direction. And as
Mm.
you said, having those dedicated resources, I think it just show the commitment. It does show that yes, we know there is something here, and we are trying to address it with a dedicated resources.
Hmm. And it takes out the friction for the PGRs to explore, because
Yes,
and friction and the guilt or culpability
absolutely,
for looking, because sometimes just, and I remember being in academia and thinking, oh, if I look outside, my supervisor will be disappointed at me or something, things like that. And if this is offered by the university, by the departments to the students, then all of that disappears, and
absolutely.
everyone can have better outcomes for it.
Yes,
Amal, was there anything we missed? Because I know we didn't cover all of the letters of Perma.
yeah.
Is there one last
Okay.
idea, one last key concept that you want to share, to kind of close this conversation?
Okay, great. So I think I will share like the last one, which is achievement, the last dimension, and what we just really need to think about, because again, PhD is a long-term thing, and can we think about achievements along the way? For example, it might be a seminar that you go and present something to it. It might be trying some form of dissemination that you didn't try before. It might be, let's say, a conference paper or a journal paper or something that it just to give you a little bit of achievements along the way. And I think even the idea of trying things out and maybe almost go and teach your research method, what research method you are using, can you teach that one? Is it possible? And again, those kind of like collecting those achievements along the way, it definitely help with kind of having that confidence and knowing that okay, maybe I'm not achieving the PhD because it takes time, but at least there
Mhm.
is kind of positive progress along the way, and it give again, it give that external confidence as well. Okay, someone external have looked at this work. I have been in places where I have tried this out, and that definitely help with kind of like the PhD itself,
Mhm.
and being able to say, okay, I'm going in the right direction.
Mhm. And that would take the form of what? Of a journal of achievements or
I think it depends on the subject. For example, again, with the social sciences, usually they would kind of like expect some kind of like a conference, peer-reviewed conference paper or a journal
okay.
paper. But I think others in humanities, for example, is more to do with maybe some book chapters or seminars or something like that. So I think, yeah, again, just using whatever like the language or the norm within your discipline and try to kind of engage on those ones. So having like those achievements. So at least in the first year, maybe I have done this, maybe I have contributed to this seminar, I have disseminated my work, I learned a new methodology or a new method that I haven't used it before. So maybe just document
Mhm.
or do those achievements along the way so that it does help with kind of like the final motivation and the final, even when you have got those hard times. And
Mhm.
I don't know if I can finish this, but then you go, oh, I have done this paper, I have done this seminar, so I think I can do it. So it, yeah, serve as a reminder.
Excellent. Amal, thank you so much for this conversation. It was great. I really come out of this conversation with this feeling that what you are trying to do or what you're trying to get graduate researchers to do is to build themselves from the feet up. We mentioned a few minutes ago, build, finding your feet, and really it's a holistic approach because you think about them as a whole person, and
Yes,
in that person there's the researcher, but there's also the human, there's also the family person or whatever, and it feels to me like they shouldn't forget any of these parts. They should think of themselves as a whole person
absolutely.
who's going through this 4-year process, and so who needs to think ahead, but who needs to take time at the beginning to find their feet and then start walking, and then eventually start jogging and then sprinting at the end as we
Yes,
know that's the case. But I really 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 appreciated the because we didn't ever talk about any specifics of the research, the day to day. It was really always the big picture, and I think
yes,
often what happens is we get into a PhD program and our vision goes tunnel vision, and
absolutely.
then we start missing things, and then
Yes,
we start and especially if we at the beginning we don't do that groundwork of building strong foundations, then we pay in that year 2, 3, etc. So
absolutely.
I'm really really thankful that you came and shared all
Thank
of
you.
this. I think it's going to be inspiring for anyone who watches or listens, and yeah, I want to thank you for having accepted my invitation to come on the show.
Thank you, David. That was really interesting conversation, and I think I definitely I will listen back to it and reflect back because I'm hoping to, yeah, take flourishing this more perma approach more in
Mhm.
a way and document it more. Yes, yeah,
And if you and this is really I'm going to finish now, but if you have any, you mentioned some articles or any resources that people might go and click and read, etc., share them with me and I'll put them in the show notes. That's always
great.
super useful.
That's fine. I'll definitely do that.
Awesome. So to anyone who was watching, thank you for watching. I see here we have Amel Khaled saying hi from Algeria. Hi
Oh,
Amel.
hello.
And that's it. Thank you so much, Amal. This was great. This was inspiring. Thank you for the work you're doing, and wishing you a lot of success with your students.
Thank you, David, and please continue doing this holistic work, looking at the kind of like beyond the thesis. I think is definitely needed. Thank you very much.
I'll try. Thank you.
Thank you.